Hey, y'all, what's going on? It's your boy Glenn Lawrence. I'm back with another episode of the Blerd Dad Podcast, a space where we like to have unfiltered conversations and nerd out about parenthood, fatherhood, just the hood, just everything about it, about parenting these kids. Did you miss us? Because we missed you. There was a gap of an episode. We had something scheduled, but of course, scheduling snafus happen. And I feel like I hope we didn't drop the ball by not letting you know. But we have some really cool episodes lined up. So we didn't even worry about it because we knew we had y'all covered with the episodes that we have coming up. We got some really exciting people that we're going to be talking to, like the person we are talking to today. I can't wait to get into that. But before I do, let me make sure that our sponsors get a nice little shout out because they are amazing. It's They Made Me Wear It. Yes, that's They Made Me Wear.it. They're a husband and wife team that is on a mission to get your pet in touch with its more fashionable side. So whether it's a custom designer gown, a Halloween outfit, some jammies, prom dresses, whatever you need, bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras, whatever you need for your pet, we got them covered. You know what I'm saying? They can do everything. Get little anklets for your pet. Have you ever seen a Chihuahua with the anklet? It looks amazing, and They Made Me Wear It can help that happen for you. I think. I don't know. They might not have the anklets in stock, but if they do, I'm sure they'll get them soon. Whatever. You know what I'm saying here. They're an amazing group, and they make sure that your pet looks fashionable no matter what the occasion is. And just know whenever you shop with them, you're helping out Hope for Paws, which is an animal rescue organization that works tirelessly to get these pets off the main streets, the abandoned ones. They don't take just random people's pets, but the abandoned ones, they make sure they find a nice home. If they already had a home, they'll allow them to stay in that home. So I don't know what you're waiting for. You should check out theymademewear.it. Make sure you use code word blerd for 15% off checkout. That's theymademewear.it, code word blerd, BLERD. Now, for today's guest, we have an amazing one. It's Allegra Shanèe Acuff. I think I said that correctly. She is a wife and a mom of two. She's a stay-at-home wife, which is an amazing job. One of the hardest jobs that you can have, raising these children up to be good, productive members of society. She loves homeschooling her little man, and she encourages others to do the same. She's outgoing. When she's not playing with her boy, she likes to hike, hang with her friends, and she loves some church, some good old church. So we're going to get into all those things. I can't wait to talk with one of my newest mommy friends, Miss Shanee. What is going on, Miss Shanee? How you doing?
Hey, how are you? You are real official, Mr. Glenn. OMG. This is nice.
Yeah, we try. We try to make it, official here. We try to make sure everyone feels welcome, and we're really just trying to raise the bar when it comes to our podcast. We did take a week or two, not a week off. We had another podcast, or we were trying to do a joint thing, and then it just fell through the cracks, so that we missed. So you're the comeback episode.
All right, here we go.
How you
But let
doing?
me
What's going on? We met at the library, which I
at the
feel like
library.
which is a great place to bring your kids, get them introduced to books and everything. How you been?
We have been on the go. It feels like we are in the heart of homeschool right now. Field trips, preparing for next year. Am I going to teach? I just had a 4-month old, so I'm off obviously nursing him. And so I'm like, am I going to teach next year, or I'm going to stay in the nursery with all the other babies in the co-op? Because that's how it works. If you participate in a co-op, you come in on one day and it's like school for your kids,
Yeah.
and they take classes. And so my oldest is 5. He just turned 5, and so he's in a class, and while I teach another class, and that's with the cooperative, everybody teach one and participate. So I don't know if I'm doing that next year. We're looking at curriculum for him for next year, and it's a whole thing. So we're in the heart and the thick of it, because it becomes official for us next year, because
Yeah.
we have to.
What
Yeah,
age what age is your son right now?
he's 5, but he had just turned 5, so that means he's like K4, so pre-kindergarten. And
Okay.
so yeah, so
So this
next
is the
year.
first year where like the schooling is like uh where they have to do some type of schooling, right? Like they either have to go to public school or homeschool or private, right?
Right. Well, technically it's by age, and so by the time they're 6, that's when you have to know which way you're going.
Okay.
But I know that this is where we're going, so I need to know the laws in my county, who I have to submit stuff to. Um, and that's why we decided for this year, pre-K, all right, we got to get our ducks in a row because I'm not trying to have the government come to my house tell me you're not doing it right. So we got our ducks in a row. We had our curriculum picked out, and my little man is thriving. I am super surprised, but he is doing his thing. And he loves co-op. He is a active little kid, all the energy, all the things. And so
So what is co-op? Because I've heard you say that a couple of times. What is what is co-op? What is it defined as, or what's the deal with co-op? I guess.
co-op, yeah, the deal is homeschool back in the era of, I guess, what do you Mean Girls. It got kind of like that stigma of being just with small-minded folks who just backwards woods don't really do much. But as it's grown over time, cooperatives are places where families come to teach classes and get to socialize their kids and also get around other families that are homeschooling. And so you're not doing this journey on your own because it's a rough one. You don't know everything, but there are seasoned moms who have been doing this for decades. They've got 6, 7 kids they've brought through homeschooling, and so cooperatives have been popping up all over. And we're a part of a co-op. Well, we're a part of 2 co-ops, um, and both of them just I don't know they really pour into our kids. You don't want to just be the only voice your kid has. You want to have other like-minded people pouring into your children. And
Mhm.
so when you join a co-op, you pay a fee for your family, and then you pay per class. And so with Jackson being my oldest is Jackson. He was 4 at the time, so he's in K4. He is in one class at our one co-op, but then there's another co-op where you get to choose electives.
Mhm.
And so that's it's not a main curriculum. Their cooperatives are typically places where you choose your electives for your children. And so he's in a reading class. He's in just a get to move your body class. He's in a sculpting class. I don't know. He comes back with some kind of creativity stuff every Wednesday. Um, and what other? He's in one other class, but on our Tuesday co-op, it's strictly like a preschool. It's ran like a preschool. It feels like so he gets that morning calendar time, morning devotion time with the teacher, and working on his numbers and letters, which reinforce our curriculum at home. And what else? And then we get to actually go out as a family for lunch. And so it's not something that like lunch, we bring all of our stuff with us and we go outside and he runs around and gets all the wiggles out for an hour and then we all come back in and he does his last 2 classes of the day and then we drive home. And so we do that twice a week. And the other 3 days we're at home doing our curriculum and then going outside because that kid loves to be outside. And
That's
that's
awesome. It's like they get the whole experience, um,
yeah.
with a group, like being in a group setting, doing a group setting. And it also is probably awesome for you to have other people you can bounce things off of. Because we're, looking at that process of what it takes to do homeschooling. And we're trying to start early because by six is kind of late in terms of
Mhm.
getting them on board and getting them into
Right.
learning and reading and writing and stuff. If they don't know how to do a lot of that stuff before 6 and they're hitting kindergarten, they'd be like really far behind. And then that really puts your kid at a detriment if at that age they're trying to play catch up and the teachers don't have time for them, so they put them in the remedial classes or different
Yeah.
classes that are for kids that have like learning disabilities and whatnot. It's just really starting them off on a bad foot. I feel like if you don't start them off early. That's just my opinion. This is my first kid. I don't even know, but it just seems like you'll be putting them at a disadvantage if they
It
if they haven't
it
learned what you're
depends.
doing.
Yeah. It depends though, mister. It depends, Glenn. Like some kids don't really have any interest in school whatsoever. until they hit a certain age. And once they hit a certain age, they might just take off and not even need a whole year's worth of ABCs. They might just need a week's worth of it and just continue on in their education. I think that's the coolest thing about being a homeschool parent. Some people even like unschool. So some families don't start until their kid shows an interest.
Right.
Um, and that's very, it's very different for very different families. I Jackson is my one, but I come from a background in education, and I've watched like when you set an age, you're setting them to like, well, you need to hit these milestones when necessarily they're probably not ready socially.
Mm.
They're building other skills, and but the other skills we can't even see. We can't You can't see the emotional connections that kids are making. We can't see the problem solving skills unless you're paying attention. Like I watched this 18-month-old, because I work in the nursery because I have a child, I have an infant. Watch this 18-month-old not even saying many words, not saying any words to anybody. He's trying to put his own shoes on. And he was like, oh, this is not going to work. So he goes to the wall, tries to put his hands on the wall, falls down. Oh, that's not going to work. So then he picks his shoes up, goes to another place, puts them down, puts his hand on the table, and then proceeds to put his shoes on. And most people don't realize that's problem solving skills, that he's not even speaking words yet.
Right.
He's not even doing anything, but he has learned enough to do something on his own. And so those are skills that we're not even tracking as they get to an older age. We're only tracking their ABCs, one, two, threes, arithmetic. And some kids just not into it.
Right.
All right, not at all. I was trying to teach my baby how to read last year, and I was so frustrated. We get into this curriculum, and Miss Stewart's class he is off, and I'm over here last year frustrated because he won't blend his letters. He was not interested. He didn't want to do it. He
Yeah.
wouldn't do it for me. He wouldn't do it for nobody. But we put this curriculum on, and he'll do it for Miss Stewart's class, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I don't know. It's education is so strange, because the way that I'm one of five. I grew up going to the public school system and going and doing all of those things. But it hit me when I was teaching overseas how just the attention being paid to some kids makes all the difference in the world, and how they're able to just respond to the world necessarily. And so and this journey of like really submitting to this homeschool journey, because I'm a working person. This is not what I signed up to do when I knew we were having kids, but I knew being in the system and watching some kids being forced to fit a mold that just isn't them. And the frustrations, the diagnosis, just because they're like, look, I don't even want to be here. That's why I'm giving you behaviors. That's why I'm throwing tables. I don't want to be in here. I want to be outside. And we as adults aren't really looking for those things. We are looking at one set of skills and kind of pigeonholing them, and to some degree, and thinking that they're not going to make it or not make it and be anything. But the reality is every kid has their own bent, their own bent.
Yeah, it is super interesting seeing him grow and how he's putting things together
Right.
and how intelligent that is. And then wondering about other kids and how they navigate the world and what type of reinforcement they're getting. Because we do a lot of, the book reinforcement, but some
Yeah.
kids aren't really into that and they might be into some other type of learning. And, we've introduced him to a lot of different things, but it's very interesting to see which things he gravitates towards,
Right.
like he loves, the Play-Doh and the cutting. And one thing that we found interesting is when we're doing cooking and whatnot, he's really into like the cooking. He wants to like, oh, what do you he always says, what doing?
What do it? Oh gosh, yes.
And so we're like mixing the flour, and he's like, oh, he wants to try to mix the flour, and he wants to try to crack the eggs. And I feel like that's all a part of learning too,
Yes.
how not only is it the physics of how to put your shoes on and doing all those different things of how to navigate and move your body, but also how things fit together and what things fit together, and learning from seeing your parents do things. Oh, salt goes in here, a little dash this, a little dash that. I feel like it's all storing away, and like you said, like they're watching these things and then they're storing it in their mind, and then you're trying to pull it out of them, but they're not being cooperative at all. You're like, what's going on? Like, do you not know how to do this? Am I not teaching it right? And then they get around somebody else and you're like, the ABCD, here it is, and spelling letters, and you're like, no, I know for a fact that I go over this with you every day, and you give me nothing back, and now you go and get out here and show out.
Making me feel bad, putting everybody else on. Like, I have watched Jackson do it. I'm even like with my 4-month-old today. Like, he'll give me cues, and if I'm not paying attention to those cues, then I'm the one that's going to suffer because I'm not watching him and responding to him in a fashion in which he can receive. And so that's another thing. My husband can do things with Jackson that he would never do for me.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be outside in the car, change. He'll sit there under the car with my husband changing the oil, not doing nothing, but thinking he's doing something, and sit there for an hour and just tinker and just sit there. And I'm like, I can't get this kid to sit for me to do what I want him to do, but he's outside doing all the things. Like, we introduced a balance bike to him. And it was more out of necessity. I know you know the hustle and the bustle of Northern Virginia. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not taking my baby outside to get hit by no car. No, thank you.
Oh my
So we
goodness.
ended, yeah.
And especially because you were over in the area that where we currently live, and people drive insane out here, like really crazy drivers. And it just worries me, him being on a bike. I'm glad that we live on a road that's kind of off the beaten path, that's not on a main highway. But it is crazy how people just drive so recklessly.
And there's the park there. That's where we were going. They built that new park on Harbor Drive, and I was like, all right, let's go. Let's get on the balance bike. And I was like, no, we're not doing this. So we would always end up in like parking spots. So we'd be end up in the parking lot at the library, and just so he would be in some place contained. And so that eventually led to us going to the BMX park.
Oh, really?
And yeah, the BMX park is right behind the police station. And so then we would hit up the BMX park, and he would be on his Strider bike. And thus he started participating in a Strider bike competition. So that meant also we were outside a lot more riding his bike so that he could prepare for the balance bike competition. At 3 years old, homeboy is on a bike and on a two bike, no training wheels, just out there racing on the two-wheel bike. And I'm like, this it hit me then that, man, if we were not really watching and cultivating this, he has a knack for just racing
Yeah.
and just being out there on his bike, two-wheel bike. And the kids in the neighborhood would be like, oh, how old is he? I was like, oh, he's 3. And they're like, I'm 8, I can't ride a bike. Like, and we were like, oh, it hit us that, man, there's just so many other things that we can pour into our child and not have to like hit these milestones that may or may not be for him at this time. And that's pretty much our life, just kind of watching. We put him in basketball. He has handles, but homeboy ain't got no defense. So
That's funny. That is funny. I listen, our little dude, he's all about some defense. He does not have ball skills, or he doesn't have the coordination, but he's all about some like he'll get in the way and still, and he's not afraid to mix it up, which I think is great. But one of the things you were talking about is like pouring into them and understanding what they like, and trying to expose them to things that they like. One of the things that I worry about is like like how would I say it? Like giving him too many options, you know what I'm saying, of like things, and then he's over here and then he never really gravitates to one because there's always something new being put in front of him. That's something that I keep thinking about. I'm like, ooh, should we be not limiting, but yeah, like limiting the things, like, hey, here's the basketball, and we figure that out for a week, and then we move on to like painting for a week? Or is it kind of like what we've been doing, which is just kind of smorgasbord? Like one day you're doing painting, one day you're doing Play-Doh, one day we're outside, one day we're on the bike. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to it. It seems like you kind of have a little bit more of a handle on it.
I don't think it's like an answer per se, but it is really honestly just sitting and hearing from the Lord too, just of who they are. I don't know who they are. They lived in my body, but I don't know who they are. And as we have like noticed certain behavior. Like I was like, ooh, he's kind of like he was an only child for a long time, and it's like, oh, he doesn't really know how to share, so we kind of have to get him around some other folks, and that just kind of triggered us moving in a direction of just getting him centered around folks, and then out of that poured, okay, he's not really having a whole lot of I don't know, like I enjoy discipline because I know if we need to hit A, B, and C, but he doesn't respond from that well from me. He needs more love from me. So I was like, all right, let's get him in Taekwondo and see if they can't do something with him.
Did
it's
that work
it's
out? Did the martial arts work out?
more than you know. We put him
Really?
in again at 3.5. Yeah, it was around the same time he was taking off with the BMX, and we put him in at 3.5. And I was like, I don't know where this is gonna go. And I saw the confidence take off. Literally, and there's some videos of Jackson when he was doing his Strider bike where he was just out there. He didn't care. He didn't care about winning. He didn't care about losing. You would see all the other kids take off and him ride the white line just to be out there kicking his feet out. And then as he started to realize, oh, it's a race, he started to lose confidence. And so
Hmm.
that's simultaneously when we put him into Taekwondo. And when he broke that board by himself for the first time and realized, oh, I can do this, it was like the confidence bell took off. And that's when it was, oh, I can beat any and everybody. And I don't think that would have come just from me. Like it really came with sitting with the Lord, like, who is this child? Who do you want him to be? And then also me staying with him. We didn't always stay home with our little guy. We put him in school for the first his first 2 years. It was weird because during the pandemic, everybody was pulling their kids out. And my husband and I were like, well, we could put him in full time, and because we both worked for the county at the time, and we could have our time to ourselves. And we actually picked up more jobs and paid off a bunch of debt. But like we put him into school full time, and it wasn't until when did we take him out? It wasn't until we just started to notice he wasn't as conversational as we would hoped at one point, and we couldn't figure out why.
Mm.
Um, he was about 2.5, and I was like, man, like he's not talking that much. He's having his words or 2 words, or he's pointing, he's doing all of those. He's hitting the milestones.
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry, my ears are real tiny. He's hitting the milestones, but we're just like, man, something's not right. His class shut down for COVID, so we were out for a week. Then he caught hand, foot, and mouth, so we were out for 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, man, I saw him talk to me more than I could have ever. I was like, I thought we were gonna have problems or issues, and that's
Yeah.
when it hit me that, oh, it's time to start to stay home, because he didn't want to go back to school. He wanted to be at home, and I was like,
Mm.
ugh,
Did
ugh.
the school have like cameras there, or could you see what was happening through the day to day?
Yeah, I kept the camera on in my office, the camera on for him, and I would have my other screen up doing work.
No,
And
I meant at the school, like that he was
yeah,
going to.
he was going to, yes. At the
Okay.
school, they had a always close by is what they called it. And so the school camera didn't have sound, it just only had I could just watch him.
Yeah.
And he was interacting with the other students from my perspective fine, but when we got him home, it was a different dynamic.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's how I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe this, maybe that. But after the 2 weeks we had to stay home, and I saw his language take off, I was like, maybe it's time to maybe it's time to pull him. And
Hmm.
then once we pulled him, um, I made the decision to stay home. He was like, I don't have to go back to Mrs. So and so's class. He was like, yay! And that's when we started hitting up the libraries, doing all the things in the community, and he just seemed to thrive being at home. Um, and
There
I
might be something about that group dynamic. Like when you have sometimes when you have a group project, people tend to not say things or not be the ones to speak up until that one speaks up, and then everybody else will kind of chime in a little bit. And sometimes
Yeah.
maybe it's that a little bit of that dynamic, just being around so many people, just like, but I don't know. I'm very interested to see when our little guy gets to the same point,
Point. Yeah.
in schooling, if it changes, because we do see a change when we take him into social situations, and he's kind of, you know, way more, what would I say, shy, in those situations. When he's
Yeah.
at
That's
home,
yeah.
he's if somebody comes to visit, he's like, wait, who's this? And then he's like, oh. But then you take him into some social situations where, we're out and about, and he's like clinging to mommy and daddy, like hugging, looking behind us. We're like, wait a minute, this is not how you normally act. And but it takes him a little bit to warm up. So I'm just interested to see if schooling is kind of like the same thing or
And
not.
it's strange because it seems like school happens all day long, and it's not. And I think that is the cool dynamic of homeschooling, is that he sees me. Um, he he sees that I love him. That then there's nothing that he can do to make me love him any less. Um, Even when he's in trouble, I'll give him a pow pow. The next thing he asks for is a hug. And I'm like, I wasn't hugging my mama after she whipped my behind. Not at all, not even a little bit. And to see how he responds to people that we have kind of vetted and chosen. Usually, sometimes, and I know this was for me, you don't choose the people that teach your kids.
Right.
And I know that a lot of the times when I was in school, I probably triggered my teachers. And so they would treat me as whatever was in their trigger, not necessarily who I was. And so I didn't want that. I didn't want that for my son. I didn't want him to have to like deal with shame that didn't belong to him because some grown up is not grown up enough. And
That is the worry that we have, because it only takes like a moment to crush all the self-esteem and everything that you put into them, and then you have to like build that back up,
mhm,
building that foundation. And that's why I think early on homeschooling is super important. Maybe later in life it's like, all right, well, you want to go to public school because you got friends that are there and they're doing things it's like, all right, now maybe. But I think that the foundation to figure out who you are, I think, is a great thing to start at home, with the
yeah,
homeschool, get the training right, and then, go out into the world and do that thing. And what you're saying is it's a lot of taking ownership of the parental, responsibilities in terms of what
yeah.
the kid is learning. One of the things that you pointed out to us was a great podcast called Soul the
Oh
Story,
yeah.
which
Oh
was
yeah.
amazing, and talking about teaching the kids how to read and learning to comprehend what they've read. That was an eye-opening podcast. If you all haven't seen it, it's called Soul the Story, and it does chronicle just how we've been teaching kids to read in the country. And it's just very eye-opening to see and learn. And now we're, at the point where we're showing them letters, teaching them letters, making the connections with those letters. And I feel like even if he went into a situation where he had to read something else and they're teaching a different way, he'll have a foundation that's different than some of the other kids, like we were talking about before. Like they go in and maybe they're 6, and this is the first time they're being introduced to a lot of these concepts, and and basically what they're learning is whatever the way the curriculum has been set up. And so
Mm,
the story did a good job of showing like how these curriculums are set up and how you might want to take ownership of how your kid is reading, because it just helps them have more of an affinity for it, and more of an aptitude for it once,
mhm.
if they're taught maybe using a different style.
Good.
That was a great podcast. How much did that inform your decision for doing a lot of homeschooling, or did that come after your decision?
That came after my decision. That actually came from another homeschooling mom,
Okay.
because I was like, man, this is when I was struggling with my little guy, because I was trying to teach him how to blend letters. He knew all his letters and all his sounds, but he would not blend them together to make the word.
Hmm.
I was struggling. I was like, I just don't know. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. And she was like, no, I want you to go ahead and listen to this podcast. And I sat down, listened to it, and I was like, OMG, like this was what my teachers were doing to me. And then because I remember having such a hard time um, comprehending, and that way that they had spoken and talked to me was similar to how I was responding to my own child. And I was like, well, we're just going to back off. And then once again, he grew a little more, got into his curriculum, and now he's blending and telling me that I don't know how to blend, that I'm doing it wrong. But but you're right about the taking yourself the responsibility and accountability, but it's also intentionality. Being very intentional about what's coming in and watching what's going out, and seeing the dynamic. Seeing it's just strange. I think one of the things I like most about the cooperative is that you are the disciplinarian. So if your child is not doing what he needs to do, we don't take charge of that. We walk them to their parent. And your parent, and I guess that's the hard part. I remember about school, is that I always seemed like my parents were the enemy, and it was a byproduct though of constantly being told, well, I'm going to tell your mother.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell your dad. I'm going to call your parents. I get it with the teachers. You got to find your way of discipline, but it's a byproduct that made my parents always the enemy. They were never the ones I could go to if I needed help, because my teacher said, like, you end up, like, if that makes it, my teacher said, oh, well, if they know, they're going to get me in trouble. And that's really not what I want for my son. I want him to be able to come to me. And you don't realize that it starts that early, about like just being able to have a relationship with your children, and you're thinking one way, but if the school is enforcing another complete different standard, you would never know until you grow with them. And by the time they get to a teenage age, you're the enemy. They don't want you, because you have been told, if you don't do this, you're going to get in trouble by your parents at home.
Yeah. But I wonder, when you were saying he went to school and then he was coming back and then he wasn't talking, like, could that be part of it, of like, you're, I'm going to tell your mommy and daddy, even if it's just that light kind of nudging of like, oh, you better do this. I'm gonna tell mommy and daddy. And then he comes home and he's like, I don't want them to know, like, that thing. So he's not like talking. I just wonder if that, I'm not saying that's what it was, but that is actually a concept that I did not even think about in terms of schooling, that the teacher could be using you as the stick. You know what I mean? Like here's the carrot, do what you're supposed to say. And then the stick is your parent. And so now you become the bad guy. You didn't even know, like, oh, because your teacher is using you as that foil. That's crazy. That's not crazy. That's just, it's wild. Because I do remember a lot of times, my parents were very happy being the stick, though. They were very happy with like, oh, you tell me if he's acting up. So they actually helped reinforce that situation. But I didn't even think about that dynamic,
But for me, like, I'm so sensitive, and I see the sensitivity in my own baby, and I'm like, I would freeze up. I wouldn't say anything, even when something was wrong. And like, it'd have to take a whole lot to where I'm like in tears, breaking down. I didn't want to, like, who wants to be broken down in order to go to school? Like, it's so weird, the dynamics we allow sometimes in schooling that we wouldn't even have in a workplace. Like,
yeah. Well, what's interesting about it is kind of the way that school is set up. It's designed to usher kids into a workplace, how to be good workers, get there on time, do the work, stay for the entire time, even if your work is completed. Like, it just is teaching you to kind of be a drone almost, or robotic to some degree. And that was very eye-opening once I started doing a lot of the studying and how to get them to read, how to get them to learn. And then they were just talking about the contrast of like what the school system was kind of designed and how it's set up and what it does for kids. And that's why the Montessori kind of method or the Montessori schools where, the kids are kind of circled around and they have all these different projects and things that they can move towards, and it's a little
Right.
less structure. That's where that became a little bit more interesting. But it was cool to see that, oh, that's an alternative to it. But there's even more alternatives if you are the one taking control of the
Controlling.
learning and you're designing the curriculum and how we're going to do it. The thing that I thought was cool, because we talked to Vita Bratton, who happens to be another mom that homeschools, is the amount of going out into the world and experiencing the world you get to do with homeschooling. You get to take them
Mhm.
on field trips. So if you want to take them to the zoo or to a museum or to even a sporting event, just all these different things that you can take them to as part of their curriculum, that kind of just changes the dynamic. I mean, how many times as a young person did you go somewhere? I mean, there are kids who went to like the National Space Museum and then wanted to work for NASA because that one trip when they were 3, or they wanted to be in the movies because they saw a certain thing, at a very young age. It's like the young age, just like one instance could be super pivotal in their life. And it's very cool being able to homeschool and then bring them a new experience that they might not get if they were just in a classroom, 8 hours a day.
Yeah. And I think that right there is the key, the 8 hours. I remember going to school in elementary school. We got out at 2 o'clock. Like we didn't, it wasn't this 9 to 4 business. It was very much so different. Um,
Mhm.
and I know not everyone can homeschool, but it is necessarily like taking that intentionality and being uber intentional with the babies, with your children,
Mhm.
with the structure of our home. Like even the structure of our house has this like changed to the point of like it's Kidville, it's Teachingville. Everything everything. I don't know what he and my husband were doing the other day, but there's numbers on the doors for some reason, for some game, for some I don't know purpose, but it's every aspect of our lives now becomes a point of education. And even in my husband and I's marriage, like there are times where I'm like, man, our baby sees you. Our son is looking at you. He comes to me for the love and the comfort, but man, he wants to be you. So if you're not doing it, he's not going to. And it's really taking that and sitting on it and marinating it and praying on it, like, because we can't change ourselves, but at the same time, like, we could create these habits that just would help foster better habits in our children for their future. Like getting up, brushing his teeth, like making like these pivotal habits that sometimes folks just don't even get. It's it's strange to think sitting in a classroom 8 hours a day. A lot of the times, it doesn't take that much to learn.
Mhm.
It literally sometimes takes a 5-minute repetition and we're on to the next subject. It's
Mhm.
the 8 hours, if you ever break it down, is shuffling kids from one place to the next.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in, like, if you ever taught in a teaching environment, the transitions take the longest time. The
Right.
lunch take the longest time.
And all
It's
the learning increments are broken down into 15, 20-minute periods. Okay, now we're doing the computer thing. Now we're doing the writing thing. Now we're doing and it's all broken down in the small little increments, and they're breaking them down in the small increments a day. Now, don't get some people learn very well in that structure, and some people excel in that structure. Some people need that structure
structured.
to
Yeah.
to to learn things. Some people would not be good in a Montessori type environment where they're just bouncing off doing one thing. But that's the great thing about what we have is the school choice, where you can choose, hey, my kid is very good at like going out and working with the animals, or going out and
Yeah.
doing XYZ, working with his hands, and he learns that way. He's going to learn to count by picking up all, like getting all the chicken eggs and being like, okay, there's 15 chicken eggs, or whatever. Or some kids are good, you put it on the thing and then they can recite it. And some
Yeah.
kids are good at looking at a video, some kids are good at mimicking what somebody else does. And it's good to have this kind of tapestry of different learning
Yes.
styles that kids can, be filtered into. And I think it's a detriment to have, kind of a one size fits all for everybody. And that was one good thing I think about the pandemic, is it showed that there's so
Mhm.
many different ways to get kids to learn. Now, it's not great that the social aspect has been kind of torn away, but the breaking out of that mindset that the kid has to be in school, and parents actually exploring the different opportunities to homeschool or have them in a different type of school program, I think is great, because taking control of what your kid's learning is much better in terms of trying to get them to be more well-rounded, because you see them every day, you kind of know that.
Yeah. Well, and to add to your point, like it is also like the social aspect is funny because even as a teacher in the school system, there was no talking. There's silent lunch. No
Right,
talking. There's
right.
like, and,
But no talking is that's for the teachers. That's not for the kids. The kids want to talk, but the teachers are like, I can't take it. It's too loud. Nobody talk.
nobody talk. It's silent lunch, and I'm like, hold on, where are the social aspects of this? Like, we're
That's
supposed to.
crazy.
It was insane to watch that, and I think also, yeah, this is a concept, like, I read all the time, so there's so many different resources. So for us, we're using Abeka, but some people use Classical Conversations, and, but
What was
Charlotte
it called?
Mason.
Abeka, you said?
Abeka, yeah, because
How do you
for
spell
us,
that?
oh geez, let me see if I can find one of his books around here. I think it's Abeka,
Okay.
Abeka, yeah. Um, but all of with all of the voices, like you still have all of these choices, but when you narrow it down, it's strange because when you talk about the social aspects of all school and the homeschool kids are the most social. Like I didn't realize it until I got to college. I had this one kid who was he was homeschooled all the way through high school, and the like just had because he got all of his ability to communicate from his parents, from other grown ups,
Right.
uh, not from knucklehead kids.
Yeah.
Like you're in a group of kids who don't know how to socialize, and you're picking up all of these habits.
Yeah.
And
Well, also there's the what's it called? Like the social hierarchy of kids. So even, they're learning to interact with each other, but then it's, the big strong kid is, the leader, everybody else kind of falls in line, and oh, you're wearing something different than we wear. Now you're on the outcast. So
that
that is different too. You know what I
it's
mean?
different.
And when you have the structure of 8 hours a day, you got to be silent, at these times, these different little hierarchies within the classroom develop, because it's not like because the kids are silent they're not communicating. There's all
Right.
kinds of little, now they're communicating on a different level, body language, mouthing words, it's almost like they, for lack of
They
a better term, it's like,
adapt.
yeah, they like adapt to it, and so now they're communicating on that level, and then it becomes much more, you got to act like us, be like us, so you can communicate with us. And it's just like a different communication style than an open
So
communication style that you would have with your parent, which is also a dynamic that I didn't really think about either.
yeah,
It's all these things that kind of are being read into your kid. And once again, it's not saying that it's bad, because some people thrive in those
thrive.
situations, but
Hmm.
you kind of flatten everybody out, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
everybody who's great with doing it is great, but then you just flatten and kind of mush all the other kids into the same level, and they don't get to expand, because there's some kids who are going to be great musicians or great artists or great cooks or great farmers, or all these different things that they could be if you just allowed them to be that thing. But if you press them all down, then and then we wonder why we have this whole society that's all depressed and sad,
press.
and all the, because it's like they're doing things that they're like not meant to do. It's almost like
Right.
God-given abilities aren't allowed to spring up, because everybody's been flattened out, and they have to kind of do the same thing a lot of times.
A lot of times, yeah, and it's weird you say that because there's a saying, or I don't know, a TikTok, a Facebook, I forget where I got it from, but if you judged a fish's ability to climb a tree as to how smart he is, he would be considered dumb, and not
Mhm.
everybody is capable of fitting in a classroom
Right.
setting. Um, and it's strange because I still have wonderful, like I have some beautiful teachers who have these beautiful hearts, but the teachers are also frustrated. It's
Yeah, well, yeah, the teachers aren't they don't get to go in there and, kind of do the beautiful mind thing and bring their own curriculum in there. Once you teach, it's like you're teaching the thing that they said. So it's like you get a little wiggle room within within the curriculum given to you, and you got to deal with that.
you got to
And
deal with that.
you can actually see, oh, I know a much better way that I could teach this. It's like, it's outside of the purview. And I think that's another thing that happened during the pandemic. A lot of those teachers, I mean, we saw them spring up on like YouTube and whatnot, and TikTok and Instagram, where there's all these different learning materials from teachers who were frustrated, said, I'm gonna do my own thing. And now here's this other course that you can get, and you can use that to homeschool your kids. I actually did look up what you were talking about. It's called Abeka, Abeka, like you spelled it.
Yeah.
You had it right, by the way. You were right.
All right.
But yeah, homeschool with confidence. That looks great. There's so many more resources if you're going to
So
be doing the homeschooling thing. It's not as daunting, I feel like, as it once was. Like before, I felt like you had to search out everything and try to figure out everything and make sure you're within the right parameters of what your state and everything allows. And now it's just it's there. Things are kind of put in front of you, made real easy to kind of go about these routes and do the homeschool thing.
do the home and give you resources. There's scholarships out there. I know for West Virginia where we are, like there's a Hope Scholarship. There's
Oh, that's right. Y'all moved so far away from us. We've been meaning to set up a play date with y'all.
It's not that far.
It's not.
No, it's not that far. Think Charlestown. Like people come up here to go gambling all the time. Like it's not that far from Wood. Like we exchange the sitting in the traffic for just a longer distance. Because if you go to like anything in Northern Virginia, you're sitting. We lived right there in the heart of everything, and it took us 30 minutes to get to IKEA. IKEA is 5 miles from the house.
Yeah.
It was insane. I was like, I can't sit in the car all the time.
Yeah.
Just stopping and going, stressing me out, raising my blood pressure. I was like, so we just exchanged that stop and go distance for a longer, more peaceful drive into Northern Virginia. Because our one co-op is in Northern Virginia. It's in Warrington, so it's not as far as people think. But I will say that when it comes to just the ability to reach the resources, there is also, I think, Shiva sounds like sorry, it sounds like a Norse god, but they're out there. They and they've been there for a long time, so it's a little different. It's a little strange. I will say the one struggle I do have is finding folks of color that are homeschooling. So like that's part of why we stay kind of going into Northern Virginia, because it is more diverse in Northern Virginia. But that in contrast to that, like I felt like Black culture was always seen as bad when I was in school, and I don't want that dynamic for my kid either. Everything that I did was always seen as weird or outside of like the purview of what was the normal standard American life. And so I kind of internalized that as well, of thinking that I was bad and that I had to not just change parts of who I was, but everything of who I was.
Right.
It wasn't until honestly I became a mom and a wife, really, well, because I married a white guy. He's a beautiful soul who just loves me, loves life. And I was really struggling like with my own identity. And I didn't realize, like, I had to sit with it for a long time, that parts of that stemmed from being forced into these classrooms where I was kind of one of the few Black faces at that time. And like everything that I did was seen as backwards or bad or different. And so my language changed, like my tone changed.
Yeah, and you get disciplined quicker for just, like if you're turning, if you got to turn left and you turn right to do a circle to get there, is that wrong? Because you got to the same place, but it's like, no, we need you to do it this way. It's like, well, that's not the way I would naturally do it. But it's like, no, you got to do it our natural way, and I just think the disciplining of Black children, especially in the school system when it's predominantly white, ends up being like more like over, because it's like, oh,
Over,
we
yeah.
got to make sure that you, oh, look what you're doing, and you're like, hold on, I'm literally just being me, like I'm literally not doing something. And I have to, a lot of times here with my son, I just let him kind of go, like give him like extra leeway to see what he's doing, because sometimes I'll be like, hey, do XYZ, and then he'll turn and go another way, and I'll stop, because sometimes your natural inclination is to be like, I said do this, to chastise or whatnot, and it's like, oh wait, he was just turning to do it, and then he like came back around on it. So it's like, if I would have gave him the extra time, he was going to do it his way anyway. But a lot of times it's like you're trying to beat him in, and then they're like, dang, I just want to like I just want to be free. I'm doing what you're saying, but like I don't have to jump when you say jump, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's a thing to learn, but they don't usually get that leeway, or we don't usually get that leeway, especially when you're not the majority of the population.
And it's not to like, it's not even to say that like everything is, I know it's all triggering and like baiting right now, but it's not about racism. It's more about like, man, it's my culture. Oh, am I okay to be me?
Right.
Am I okay? And a lot of the times, and that's why it's so important for us to kind of like get around other different kinds of folks. Like, and we we are around them. Sorry, they're out there doing their thing, and I'm a little distracted. All I hear
No
is
worries.
screaming.
I think it's like what you're saying. It's very interesting, because it's not like just white culture does it to Black culture. Other cultures do it the same. Like if you were in a like a all Asian classroom or all Indian classroom or all Mexican, they're going to have their own social ways of being that they're going to discipline more if you're from the outside of that, and it's going to be foreign to you. So it's kind of just like when you're not teaching your own, they don't understand the ways of that. And that's even if you were predominantly Black, and you know what I mean, like a white student, they're going to get that too. It's just being part of your group that helps you feel more like you are okay, and it builds a little bit more confidence in you.
And that is where it's like, that's where I was going. Is like, I just didn't know it was okay for me to be me. I didn't know it was okay to have a deeper voice. I spent like half my time trying to have a nice, like, I can't even do it. I can't even do it now. Like it's just, and it's not just important for me now to be in these spaces, so that way like other people can like, oh, there's other cultures that can do, oh, like you kind of are now. It's a little bit of pressure, but it's like you're introducing other folks to your culture too, in a way that is non-threatening. I think to some degree there's a degree of ignorance,
Right.
in all of us, where we just don't know. So we out here just living off of or responding to people in just disrespectful ways. Part of my history is I did teach in South Korea for almost 3 years.
Right.
And so just to watch the dynamics of Korean people, how they teach their kids strategically, really influenced me. And it was one capacity in general where like even I watched one of my Korean bridesmaids, she does this. It's like it was just to put their hand on their sleeve and to put their coat on so that it doesn't get trapped. I watched all of my students do this the same way. And when I saw that one thing, I was like, oh my goodness, they culturally teach their kids to do certain things culturally. And it really hit me because I felt like, to the point of like just why like school didn't do me any justice, is like I didn't feel attached to my culture and that it was okay to just be me. And it really has taken a long, long time to just feel like I can go do something and just be who I am, the way that God designed me and the culture in which God designed for me to grow in. And I don't like it. And imagine for me, like, what are the things I could have been doing in my own culture that would have just been able to just solidify to grow who I am. I'm just now coming into that as a mom so that I don't pass that kind of trauma on to my kids. And so like it's been an eye-opening, whole, well-rounded experience homeschooling because it's not for them. It
Yeah.
really is for the parent. Um, and it's
So,
a journey that the whole family goes on.
yeah. So speaking of the whole family and being a mom, you now have a new one.
Woo!
How's everyone adjusting to the newcomer?
The newcomer, oh my goodness, taking our home by storm. I'm a boy mom, so it's another boy. We did not know the gender before we gave birth. We decided to keep it a surprise, and I secretly wanted a girl, but this the new addition has been great for everyone. My oldest is the best big brother to this little one. He's out there right now, just sitting with them. They're out there yelling. I don't know what they're doing. Um, um, and just, I don't know. There's a level of growth that I've watched in my oldest that it's inspiring to some degree. So protective, so caring. Like we had, what do you call that? The car seat. We had a Duna that's just that's just my oldest height, and he would just zoop around. Like I told you, he's a racer. He zoop around and zoop the baby around to the point people didn't think that there was a real baby in the stroller. And I was like, no, there's a real baby in there. But then it also got to the point to where if it wasn't going that fast, new baby was upset.
Oh,
So
really?
like, yeah. So it was like, all right, you might as well go ahead and just zip around because it keeps the baby quiet. But he came in this world. Man, we're all in love. We're all just enamored. He's teaching me. This is the first kid. Like my eldest, we have formula and nursing a bit, but this one is fully exclusively on nursing, and I feel like I'm learning more
Hmm.
just in the facts of nursing him, just learning more cues, learning more, just learning that there is a tiny human with a whole personality already built in that is my responsibility to learn him.
Hmm.
It's not vice versa quite yet. So it's been another whole journey, I think, um, and growth for me, and I think, and especially for my husband. Um,
That's amazing. That's awesome. All right, we're gonna let you get back to him, but before we
like,
go, we have to ask the blurting question, and that question is, what do you like to blurt out or nerd out about?
oh man, oh man, you get me into I'm a conspiracy nut. Okay, so you get me and my girlfriends talking about some real good conspiracy, and the tension starts to rise. Like
Oh my!
we are,
So
it
y'all
is.
are all in it. So y'all are all in the chemtrails and everything. What's your favorite one so
Oh,
far?
I can't say it on camera. They watch it.
That's the one thing that's the one nerd subject that we won't go too deep into. It's like, oh, we can't go that deep because you can
We
go
can't go
deep on
that
them.
deep.
But it's like,
But
you know what? The deeper you go, the more you're like, oh my goodness. Did you see? Cat Williams had an interview with Joe Rogan, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. There's like so much information in there. Like, there's so many things to grab onto that you're like, wait a minute, what was that? And then you're like, oh my, like there's a lot to it.
let me Google this real quick.
Let me Google it.
You gotta watch it on the TV and Google
it
on your phone at the
you know
same
what?
time.
It started to get to the point where it's like, anytime I hear anything, no matter how outlandish, aliens, clones, whatever, I'm just like, all right, what is like, maybe, could it be?
Are you kidding me? Being in the homeschool community, all of us are kind of like we're all. It takes a kind of person to be around your kids all day. But there's the flat earthers, man. They take you down some rabbit holes, like
Very much.
and
And you're like, wait, could it be? But
could
here's the
it
thing. Here's
be?
the
You
thing. I
follow?
feel like because, and this all goes back to what we were talking about, because you had such a structured and narrow um, schooling, right? Public schooling, the amount of information that you have outside of what is allowed to be taught is
Mm-hmm.
immense. So
It's immense.
now really you're just sussing out all the information that you might have learned when you were in school, because you had like this narrow curriculum that only taught you certain things. And
Yeah.
there's certain things that you could probably debunk or say, okay, that's crazy, if you were exploring it when you were in your teenage years, or if you were
Right.
learning it there. But there's also things that was like, oh wow, that might be true. How many of these things have we figured out? Oh wow, that actually is something that, happened, or that actually is a thing. But it's kind of wild how many people are very apprehensive about these things and don't have an open mind of being like, you know what, that could be true. That could be,
It could be true.
how is it
Yeah.
not true?
Or the passion that people have behind it because they're affected by it, right?
Yeah.
And so we can't negate that they're not affected. But oh man, it's so weird, Glenn, because I think we just live in a very polarizing time. And so
Hmm.
it's so difficult to kind of have a differing opinion
Yeah.
in certain spaces.
You know what? Just so the general, the mainstream knowledge, how come people don't view that as conspiracy theory? Like, because the theory is that but it's not true if you do like a lot of research. So
A
how
lot of
come
reason.
the research is a
It's
conspiracy, but
conspiracy.
the general knowledge is
It's the
so I mean,
truth, right?
yeah. I feel like the walls are coming down between everything that, like we said, is in that small, narrow channel of
Yeah.
knowledge that everybody used to have. And the walls are
Yeah.
coming down, and everybody's kind of saying like, oh wow, there's a lot more out here. There's a lot more to everything. Like, even for
Yeah.
instance, like the food groups, you know what I'm saying? Like the food groups where you think, okay, there's a food pyramid and it's set up. And then when you do some studying, you're like, wow, that was really kind of instituted by, the different lobbies and the different food manufacturers that were trying to sell their product. And they made it so that they said, hey, if everybody eats these things, we'll always be selling product. And a lot of people don't know that. They still are like,
Right.
no, the food pyramid, it goes from here to here, and you got to eat this and this and this, and
Oh,
corn and milk and all this other stuff. And you're just like, wow, like it really did permeate into just the general knowledge of everybody
of
without any
everybody.
pushback.
That's a conspiracy theory. There's some things out there about that, but at the same time, like it's weird because I ate all those food and it made me fat. I flipped it upside down and I got skinny. Wait, what is
Wait,
this?
exactly. What is this? That's crazy, right? That's what's wild when that's the thing. It's when you look at some of the things and you start applying the knowledge, it's like, wow, it actually does work. That's weird.
That's a little straight. I know, but I think that is where I think being intentional about, even if you can't homeschool, being intentional about the education that your children are receiving and being a part of it, being involved in it, and knowing what what our kids are learning, so that way, like we can be their encyclopedia, we
Hmm.
can be their go-to. Like that is what I hunger and desire most, and why we followed this path is that I don't want to ever not be a resource to my kid, or be his enemy, their
Yeah,
enemy now. Yeah. And
yeah,
so, like, if we could just like consistently, because if my family were getting uproars and arguments about some of the things I would bring back to my parents, like, well, that's a lie, that's not this, that's not. But they're one of my resources, and
right.
them growing up in Jim Crow, like they were the ones like
Yeah,
completely cut off, and it's not that long ago. My parents are 65. Like
right.
it wasn't that long ago. We have to continuously learn what has happened so we don't repeat the future, and we have to pass on the knowledge so that they don't repeat it and wound up really kind of enslaved to their own desires or enslaved
Right.
to just a
And
system
not
that
even knowing it. That's the other
and
thing.
not
Not
even
even
and
knowing it.
not even knowing it.
Yeah. So, wow, that was awesome. That was a trip. We're not going to go down the super
I
rabbit hole. We're
know.
going to
Don't I
implore the
told you, don't get
listeners.
me geeking out.
Exactly. Y'all go and geek out over these theories and see what is what. We're not endorsing any of them, but we're
Any
like,
of
hey,
them.
there's some kernels of truth out there that you can find if you look for them. But all right, do you have anything coming up, or any like social media that you want to plug, or anything that, or even like a charity, or a group that you would want to support or highlight for the end of the show here?
Yeah, I wish I did. I'm a regular old woman that are just homeschooling her babies. Maybe next time you have me on on the pod, I might have something, but I'm just a regular old gal, who just wants to be be here.
Well,
So,
we'll plug Abeka, which is
oh yeah.
abeka.com, which is a homeschool with confidence, which is a homeschooling curriculum site. And then I think the other thing you talked about was the Shiva Center, right? Or no?
Oh yeah. Okay. So like, if you really want to get yourselves into like knowledge, there is home. Oh, gosh, it's on my phone, but I'm on my phone. Hiva, HEVA, especially if you live in Northern Virginia. It's a homeschooling education uh, site, and they have resources to help you navigate whether or not this is the decision for you to homeschool, or even just like some of the things that we have to do as homeschooling moms. You don't want to walk blind.
Right.
Um, so and but I live in West Virginia, so it's Sheba for us. It's SCHEWA or Chewy. It's a different website. But definitely there are resources and people out here that are way smarter than I am and way more equipped and can walk with you through
Right.
this. So
Yeah, I think it's dope. I think we're gonna figure it out. And we're gonna get these kids. We're gonna get these kids learned. You know what I mean?
there's
We're gonna get
hope.
them.
I mean, they talk about society being like, oh, it's debates. No, it's not. We out here. We out here. We trying. We're working some things. We're revamping some things, and I think it's gonna be okay.
All right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna make it happen. We're
Yeah.
we're gonna get these kids learned, man. I think that um I don't know. I'm just excited to see, what's going on. There we go. It's
There we go.
heave.org,
There we go.
heav.org, and abeka.com. Check those out for some resources if you're trying to get your child homeschooled. I don't know. We did it all. We have done a lot here. We have we caught up a little bit. It's so good to see y'all. We got to come out to West Virginia, hang
Yeah.
out, or y'all come out this way. I know y'all already been out here, but
My
come out
family
again.
is like, yeah, my family's right down the street from y'all. We'll be down there again. I
Yeah.
think what next week.
Yeah, come on out. You know what? Come out to see a show. I haven't seen you come out and laugh yet. That needs to happen sooner
Because you
rather
didn't
than
send
later.
me you didn't send me the email.
I
Stephanie didn't
know,
send it.
I
She didn't
know,
send it.
I know. I'm sorry. We post them online, but I need to
All
send
right.
it to you. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna blame Stephanie because Stephanie has your information and she didn't send it to you. So that's
But
Stephanie.
that's all right. I got you now, so I'm gonna go ahead and go to your website, and we'll be out there. But I will tell you, we just had a baby. That's why. That's why
Oh
we didn't
no,
come
for
out.
sure, for sure.
We
You're
will
out of commission
hibernate.
for at least 6 months. I'm sure it's at least half the year. But
At least half the
yeah,
year.
we run again. We talked about some great homeschooling curriculum and resources, teaching these kids, making sure these kids get um inspired and encouraged and
Mhm.
supported and build up their self-esteem. We also talked about some cool little conspiracies and whatnot. We've done quite a bit here, so I don't think there's anything left for us to say except for Blerd Dad out.